Hello everyone, I am Ashita. I'll be your host for today's event. Thank you Varsha ma'am for starting this event with such an insightful commencement address. Without further ado, I would just like to dive into the heart of RISC. Let me express my gratitude to all of you for being here in this exciting event with us. It's my privilege to introduce our first keynote speaker. She is Professor Shweta Agrawal from the Computer Science and Engineering Department at IIT Madras. In the world of cryptography, Professor Shweta Agrawal is an esteemed and distinguished researcher. She earned her PhD at the University of Texas at Austin, and she did her postdoctoral work at the University of California. Her extensive research in cryptography and information security, with a particular focus on post-quantum cryptography, has earned her numerous accolades, including the Swarnajayanti Award and the ACM India Award for Outstanding Contributions to Computing by a Woman. She has received Best Paper Award at Eurocrypt, Google India Faculty Award, BY Award for Excellence in Research and Teaching, and she has been an invited speaker at prestigious conferences like Asiacrypt and Women in Mathematics. Ronald Rivest, a famous cryptographer and computer scientist, once said, "Cryptography is about communication in the presence of adversaries." Today, in her captivating talk, Professor Shweta Agrawal will guide us through the intricate dance between the possible and seemingly impossible within the world of cryptography, the art of negotiating with the impossible, as she aptly puts it. Please welcome Professor Shweta Agrawal.
So it's great to be here. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to IIT Bombay for the invitation. I'm really excited to talk to all of you. And thanks for the kind introduction. So indeed, I'm very excited not only to be here, but from Varsha's introduction, I see that many of you are students who are thinking about a research career. So it's truly exciting and a privilege for me to introduce you to this beautiful field, cryptography, right? So cryptography is the art of paradox. How many of you have had a little bit of exposure to cryptography? Okay, so that's good. So a few of you. Let's just sort of jump right in. This talk is going to be really at a high level, and I encourage you all to ask me questions as and when they come up. Okay, so we have an hour, but we're not going to try to cover any ground. We'll just talk and we'll stop in 1 hour. Okay, so how does that sound? So please ask me questions, or if you have comments anytime during the talk, please do speak up. It's always more fun like that. So cryptography is the science of keeping secrets, and actually as we heard in the introduction, there was one definition of cryptography about communicating secretly, but really in the modern world cryptography has grown so much bigger than that. Okay, so there are lots of really amazing, very surprising applications that cryptography enables. The first one, which is actually considered the most basic one, but which staggers me even to this day after more than a decade of research in this area, is this idea of exchanging secrets within a crowd. Now, most of us have heard the term encryption, etc. And nowadays when we talk about this exchanging secrets in the crowd, people are like, yeah, I mean, isme kya hai? This is, just encrypt. But for this talk, in fact, I mean, for any kind of research, it's good to put aside ideas of what we know and just think from very basic first principles, okay? So this is the stage. So we're here today. I'm here, right, with a mic. Most of you are meeting me here for the very first time. And now let's say that, there's one person with whom I decide that I want to communicate in secret. Let's say the girl in the blue over there, okay? And the only channel of communication I have is this microphone. Everything that I say can be heard by everybody, okay? And everything that she says can also be heard by everybody. We've never seen each other before. We've had no prior communication of any sort. Just in this moment, we decided to speak, and we want it to be the case that though everybody can hear everything we say, somehow only the two of us can figure out what is actually being said. There's some secret in there. Do you think this is possible? How many of you think this is possible? Okay, very good. So the last time that, I gave some outreach talk, And similarly, people said, yeah, this should be possible. I actually abandoned my slides and spent the whole hour convincing you why this should not be possible at all. Okay, but for the sake of the organizers, I will not do this today. But if you run into me again, beware. So this is super, super surprising. And oh, you know what? I can tell you an interesting anecdote. So recently, I was at this Pingla Interactions of Computing, and there we, I was discussing this this notion of exchanging secrets within the crowd. And there was a Turing Award winner there, a senior gentleman, and he did not actually know of this particular notion. And after the entire event was over, right, he finally, when he understood what key exchange enables, his jaw dropped open. Okay, so I'm just trying to tell you that this is very surprising, and the fact that you think it should be possible means that you have to think again, okay? But I won't say anything more about this. Another thing that it lets you do is it lets you prove to somebody that you know something without telling them what you know. Now, let me give you an example, okay? So now let's say that, IIT Bombay, since they're into so much fun, they hand out these Sudoku puzzles to everybody, okay? And they promise some big money to whoever solves it first. So, of course, I want the prize. And I claim that I've solved it. Okay, so as soon as Varsha gives me this puzzle, I take a look at it and I say, I have the solution. Now, I want to convince everybody that I actually do have the solution. Generally, how do you convince somebody of such a thing? You show the solution, right? So you can show the solution, everybody can verify it, right? But here, I'm not allowed to actually show you the solution. So I don't, I need to convince you that I have the solution, but I'm not allowed to show you the solution. Is it possible for me, without cheating, to prove to you that I have the solution without telling you the solution? Is it possible? So maybe after all my threats in the previous bullet point, now people are more afraid of saying it's possible. It should not be possible, but cryptography makes it possible. Okay, so again, we don't have time to go into this, but it's another one of these really fantastical things that cryptography allows you to do, which is why in the abstract of this talk, I said, it's really about negotiating with the impossible. It's like, oh, you want to do this thing? This does not sound like it should even be possible. Cryptography says, let's do it. Okay, so it's really a beautiful field. Yeah?
Going back to the first one, there is some implicit assumption about the physical properties of the medium.
Just air. I mean,
Yes,
we're assuming this medium.
What if, for example, if you can measure the distance between speaker and receiver accurately?
No, we're, just...
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There are some implicit assumptions about the physical medium you're making.
I'm talking of this room today.
Yeah.
Here. So
Correct.
This is my medium. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
I came here and this is my room. Let's say we want to talk.
Suppose there is a technology by which you can measure the distances accurately.
Okay.
Okay. And hence you know the distance to the blue girl. And using that property, you can figure out an encryption key and then proceed with your communication.
Okay, let's take this offline. I mean, what I have in mind, so we're veering very close to me abandoning this. This is exactly what happened last time. So everybody was like, yeah. And then at the end of the talk, everyone was like, no, okay. Let's take this offline. Okay, but I just want to say that it's actually the assumption that you're really making is that the universe permits asymmetry in computation. Okay, we will be talking about this more in the rest of the talk. So let's get back to it later. Okay, yeah, great question. Anything else? Okay, so let's keep going. Another thing which is sort of, more, these first two are more classic applications. A much more modern one is, you want to run machine learning algorithms, but on data that is encrypted. Okay, we'll talk more about this in the next slide. And another one of my favorites is encoding a message which can be denied later. So let me also we'll also take a deeper look at this. So cryptography is really a field of indisputable utility. More importantly, really indescribable beauty. It's really like a game of chess where you always have to be one step ahead of the attacker. Okay, so never a dull moment. So let's come to this application I told you about computing on encrypted data. And let me read from an article that appeared at Nature several years ago. The dream for tomorrow's medicine is to understand the links between DNA and disease and to tailor therapies accordingly. But scientists have a problem: how to keep genetic data and medical records secure while still enabling the massive cloud-based analysis that is needed to make meaningful associations. Okay, so personalized medicine is really a poster person application. So I think everybody agrees that medical research is very important, right? And we'd like to contribute to it. Now, people have genetic data with them, but it's also something very, very private, right? So you don't want to just hand it over. You don't really trust what people are going to do with this data. So can you run some sort of algorithm which allows you to compute what you want? Like, let us say, the correlation between some pattern in your DNA and some disease or something like that. But while the data is still encrypted somehow. So, the data is hidden, but you're still getting what you want out of it. Sounds impossible, right? Okay. Here's another thing. Okay, so activism with safety. So this is what I mean. So let's say that, I'm in a regime where there's oppression and I want to organize a revolution, right? So of course this has happened, it keeps happening, it's still happening. So let's say that I want to encrypt some message, but it's something which is very dangerous. Now let's say that I've encrypted something like that. Here one thing to note is that encryption is a probabilistic algorithm, so there's some randomness there. And now somebody comes and puts a gun to my head and says, you published this ciphertext, open it, right? What can I do? Well, a hope would be that under coercion, I can reveal some fake random coins R prime. So remember, I encrypted using some R and I got some C. And under coercion, what I'm doing is I'm actually giving you some fake random coin R prime, which somehow lets me explain the same ciphertext as an encryption of some very benign message. Okay, so this is this notion of deniable encryption. Yeah, we won't talk any more about it. It's just another very surprising application. So in this talk, right, I've hopefully convinced you that cryptography allows you to cook up all these really amazing things. And today what we'll do is we'll talk or kind of take a little peek at how we do this, right? How do we prepare all these fantastic things? Okay, so that's what it will be about. And as a case study, we'll take sort of the most basic primitive that everybody knows about, which is just encryption. Okay. So encryption, as you already know, I mean, everybody has, let's say, a public key and a private key. So my public key is known to everybody. My private key is known only to me, right? If you want to send me a message, you'll encrypt it using my public key and I'll be able to decrypt it using my private key. So everyone's familiar with this notion of encryption, right? And there are really two properties that we want from any encryption scheme. One is functionality or correctness, which means what? Well, if I encrypt something, somebody should be able to decrypt it. Otherwise, it's useless, right? And security is that the ciphertext should leak no information. So if I don't have the secret key, I should be able to learn nothing about the ciphertext. Okay, and really cryptography is about walking this fine line, right? You want functionality together with security. A little bit of thought will show you that these are really opposing requirements. Okay, any one without the other is easy. So functionality without security is definitely easy. Don't encrypt. Security without functionality is even easier. How? Yes?
Is it really possible that the key we are sending to the medium is actually or not leaked by the medium, because medium itself somehow getting corrupted? In that case, what should we do in that case? Like, there is a 100% guarantee about secrecy, because in previous slide you
Okay,
mentioned.
so I think if I let me know if I understood your question correctly. I think the question is that how much guarantee can you have that the secret key is indeed secret, right? This
Because
is the
medium
question.
also have its own secret.
Medium,
Can that have,
yeah,
medium inside medium inside.
there's no medium. Okay, so I'm running this setup algorithm. I generate a public key and a secret key. I just keep the secret
How
key
we
with
store
me
in it, in where we store that key.
in my head, let us say.
Then in that case it doesn't leak, but
You can write it on a paper and keep it with you.
We talk
You
about
can.
machines, so in that
Okay,
case,
so we're going to assume that we generate our own secret key. This is for simplicity. So I should say that in practice you're right that
nothing is-
secret keys can get leaked and one has to worry about that. Actually, this touches upon an important aspect of cryptography, which is how you model security. Okay, so here in the modeling that I'm presenting, we're really assuming that the secret key is completely secret. It is possible in the real world, like there are these things called side channel attacks and so on, through which, some bits of the secret key can get leaked. I mean, people can call me and ask, say something about my parents being in danger or something, and maybe I'll just panic and give the secret key. So there are lots of ways in which keys get leaked. But we're not going to talk about that. Okay, so we're going to, for the purpose of this talk, and in fact for the purpose of almost most practical scenarios as well, it can be assumed that the secret key is kept secret. You can store it in a trusted hardware, okay, or you can store it in a machine to which only you have access. There are multiple ways of vaulting the secret key. Okay, so let's not worry. Does that answer your question? What?
Can we 100% say that nothing is secret?
Everything
should be leaked.
So if you, very good. So if we say that, nothing is secret and everything should be leaked, then actually any sort of secrecy is impossible by definition, right? Because if I have to protect something against somebody, there has to be some asymmetry between my legitimate receiver and an eavesdropper, isn't it? I mean, let us say I want to protect my information from you, but I would like to send it to Preeti here. So there has to be some difference in information between Preeti and you, right? If both of you are looking at the same object and both of you have the same computational resources, then obviously it's not possible to get secrecy against one and not the other. So this raises an important point. It's worth emphasizing that, we really need some asymmetry. So in information theoretic cryptography, which is another field of cryptography, we can assume that, maybe we assume that the attacker is further away. The channel between me and the attacker is worse than the channel between me and the legitimate receiver. That's an assumption. Another assumption you can make is that, the secret key is kept secret. Or even if there is leakage in the secret key, I assume that, let's say only up to 50% of the key is leaked. But I have to make some assumption. Okay? Yes?
Since you're mentioning caveats, should we also say that we are worried about generally when we come to computing, we think of computing as like 100% perfect. But all these algorithms, as you alluded to, are probabilistic.
Yes.
So with, let's say, 20, 30 years down the line with quantum computing, the game changes completely. So, sort of one of those things that the claim which is made very emphatically today may not necessarily be tomorrow with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just wanted to put that also in
Yeah,
perspective.
and in fact, it's an aspect I'll touch upon even later in this talk. Yes, so we will in fact coincidentally be talking about this a little bit later down the line. Any other questions? Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so functionality and security. Now let's start looking a little bit more deeply at, the cooking that I promised you we'll do together. So functionality, I want to say, requires some mathematical structure, okay? And security requires some hardness. So let me try to go deeper into this. Now I'm trying to build an encryption scheme, okay? I need to use some mathematical structure. So now I'm thinking of my message as some sequence of bits, let us say, and I want to hide these. So there is some mathematical structure using which, I have to construct this scheme, and I need two kind of conflicting properties. One is that there should be some nice behavior in this mathematical structure. We'll see examples, which allows there to exist a secret key which will enable decryption, right? So there has to be some structure there, okay? On the other hand, there should be some computational hardness or algorithmic hardness, so that if you don't have this secret, then this problem looks hard to solve. So we'll see examples of this, right? Now, like I told you, we have these two conflicting requirements, and we'd like to get these both together from a suitable hard problem in mathematics, okay, or computer science. So typically when we think of a source of hard problems, we think of complexity theory, right? So NP complete problems, NP hard problems, and so on. So are these going to really give us the right properties that we want? Okay, so the question I'd like to ask is, where can I find these suitable hard problems? Any ideas?
Nature for symmetry.
What?
Mathematical nature for symmetry, like flowers, like in plants.
Sure. So maybe for now, let's restrict attention to, these computer science complexity theory classes, right? So here we would hope to assume something that is widely believed, something like P is not equal to NP or something like that, right? And we'd like to build cryptography from it. So cryptography is going to prove to us that breaking some encryption scheme is at least as hard as solving some mathematical problem. Okay, and yeah, sorry, the fonts are getting messed up, but this mathematical problem, we can only conjecture that this problem is hard. Okay, now this sounds like a problem, right? Because it seems like I'm basing my security on a conjecture. And indeed, it is sort of an uneasy place to be, but we have to conjecture something. At the very least, we need to conjecture that P is not equal to NP, right? And is this enough? So is it enough for me to believe that P is not equal to NP? Does this give me cryptography? And it turns out that not quite. So there are many worlds, okay, that possibly we might live in. And these were defined by Russell Impagliazzo. Let's look at them. Okay, so what is the first world? The first world is called algorithmica. So in this, P is equal to NP. Now note that even though we believe that these are different, we actually don't know, right? So if P is equal to NP, then we cannot do cryptography. Then there's heuristica, which says that P is not equal to NP, but finding hard problems is hard. So there exist hard problems, okay, from which I can build cryptography, but finding them is hard. Then there's pestilent, which says that there exist problems that are hard and I can also find them, but there is no asymmetry of computation. Okay, so this is sort of formalized by saying there are no one-way functions. Now, one-way functions are the most basic primitive of cryptography. What is a one-way function? It's a function which is easy to compute but hard to invert. Okay, so now what would I like? I would like there to be not only a problem which is hard, but there should be some asymmetry, which means that it should be easy to compute in one direction and hard to compute in the other direction. Okay, so this is a one-way function. Then there is another world which is defined, which is called mini-crypt, in which one-way functions exist. If you take a course in cryptography, you'll see that this implies the existence of symmetric key cryptography. And then there is an even more brave world, which is cryptomania, in which we conjecture that public key encryption exists. Now, why am I showing you these different worlds? Because first of all, they capture the state of our knowledge. We don't know, right? We don't know which of these worlds we live in, right? So that's what we're asking here. Which world do we live in? And the answer is that actually we have no idea. Yes?
All right. So for cryptomania, I would like to understand if there is a more complexity theoretic definition, or is the definition tautological, that PK exists and that's cryptomania?
Yeah, it's the latter. So, we're just saying that a world in which PKE exists, we call it cryptomania. These are not mathematical terms. So, thanks for asking this. These are sort of just, they just capture, what we believe exists. Okay, so if P is equal to NP, there is no cryptography, right? And then it's not enough to just assume that P is not equal to NP. It could be that the two are different, but it is still hard for me to find hard problems with which to do cryptography. It could be that I can find them, but I don't know how to use them because there's no one-way function. So there are different possibilities, and we're just loosely defining these as these, okay? So we don't know, okay? But we want to hide our information. So we are going to conjecture that we live in cryptomania. Okay, so we will build cryptography assuming that certain problems, are hard in a way that allows us to build crypto. Are there any questions? Yes?
So you implicitly imply that these are nested?
So I mean they are stronger, yeah. So they are stronger and stronger assumptions. Any other questions? Yes?
Ma'am, what does it mean that finding hard problem is fine? Hard means exponentially, which takes
For
exponential
example,
time.
yeah, you could think of an exponentially hard problem. Like, let's take an example, like, maybe I think, so let's take an NP hard problem, okay? Like, let's say the traveling salesperson problem or something like that. Now, is it easy for me to find an instance of a graph where this problem is hard? We know it is hard in the worst case. But can I find an instance efficiently where I know this problem is hard? This is what I mean. Okay, so we are going to make conjectures about, problems that we can actually sample from. Like, we can find problems that we believe that this problem is hard. I mean, this instance of the problem is hard. Okay, does that answer your question?
So we know that the problem is hard, but the given instance is hard or not is the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good question.
So, here. If we know that one-way functions exist,
We don't know.
no,
by
I
the
mean,
way.
so is
if
the
we
problem
assume,
that,
if we assume, yeah.
so do we know that we can invert the function?
The assumption is that it is hard to invert.
But, I mean, a solution exists. That is not a problem.
Yeah, a solution exists. Okay, so back to encryption. Okay, so now, I want us in this lecture to actually build an encryption scheme. Okay, so let's do that. So, this is where we were. We want to have some problem which, allows me to get both correctness and security. And here is a candidate which we actually use. Okay, so this is called the closest vector problem on lattices. This is what a lattice looks like. Okay, so this is a simple two-dimensional lattice. Just think of it as a periodic arrangement of points. And the question that we're asking here is that if I give you some arbitrary point in space, okay, so some point t, can I find which is the closest lattice point to this point? This is the question. Okay, Is it clear? So this lattice is our mathematical structure that I was, talking about. So now we are getting, more warmed up. So more concrete examples. So this is my mathematical structure. So it's a periodic arrangement of points. And I represent it using some basis vectors. So most of us are used to these basis vectors, right? So I have these basis vectors here, just 2. And I take integer linear combinations of them. Okay, so this is a discrete space. And all these integer linear combinations, like if I take b1 plus b2, b1 plus 2b2 and so on, I get points, right? And these will be arranged in this nice way. And the question I'm asking is that, if I give you some arbitrary point in space, some t, which is my closest lattice point? Okay, so this is the question. Okay, so you see like this little circle here, yeah? So here is my point T, and I'm trying to find within the circle, is there like a lattice point? This is my problem. And a little bit, more formally, a lattice, as I already told you, so it's a set of points with a periodic arrangement. The simplest lattice you can think of is, just the integer lattice. And in these slides, we're only looking at 2-dimensional lattices. But when we work with them, we'll actually look at multi-dimensional, okay? So hundreds of dimensions, okay? So this is a simple lattice, and I can apply a linear transformation via some, matrix B, let us say, and I can get another lattice, okay? And this B is going to be like my basis matrix. So it's the basis vectors of my lattice. I will take integer linear combinations of them and get the whole lattice. Okay, so yeah, it's a discrete subgroup of Rn. This is actually a nice mathematical definition. And this is my closest vector problem. I already told you what this problem is, right? This is a little bit more formally. So mu is some parameter I give you. Okay, so I want you to find me a point, a lattice point, within some distance mu. Okay, this is the question. Now this problem is a very hard problem, and when I say hard, actually the efficiency of solving this problem is exponential in the dimension of the lattice. So this is why I need high dimensions. And I also want to say that the decision version of this problem is also hard. So what I showed you is a search version, that I give you T and I'm asking you to find some closed lattice point. A decision version will be, I give you a point and I ask you, is this close to the lattice or far from the lattice? Okay. So there can be like some measure of that. Like if I'm within this distance, mu, let us say, then I'm close to the lattice, otherwise I'm far. Okay. So this is the problem that we'll use. So now, I gave you a problem which I told you is hard. Okay. Now, how do we know it's hard? So actually the version of it that we'll use in cryptography is an approximate version. And really speaking, we only conjecture that this is hard because, we've studied it for decades. We don't know. Lattices actually have been studied for hundreds of years. In computer science, they've been studied for decades. And we don't know of better algorithms. So cryptography is also like a sort of trying to make the best of what we have. Like in algorithms, we want to solve problems, right? We want to do it efficiently. Most of the times we cannot, right? And when we cannot, we can hope to at least do something useful with it, like cryptography. Okay, so this is our hard problem. So remember, we were saying there should be functionality and security, right? And for security, we need some problem to be hard. But I also need functionality, right? So I need some mathematical structure which enables me to get functionality. Okay, so where am I going to get this structure? Or, where am I going to get my correctness from? So here, we'll introduce this really cool notion of trapdoor functions. Okay, so what's a trapdoor function? So let's generate some function f and a trapdoor t. What are these objects? So this function is, some function going from some domain D to some range R. Okay, and this is a one-way function. So what does that mean? I have this domain range, right? I have some point x in the domain. I apply this function. I get to some point in the range. And as I already told you, I mean, if I give you x, I can compute f of x, which is y. I can do this efficiently. If I give you y, I don't know how to go back to x. Okay? This is one wayness. And what a trapdoor function lets you do is it lets you invert given this trapdoor. Is the concept making sense? Okay, so in general, I don't know how to invert this function, but I want to give you some secret information that lets you invert it. Now, maybe you're thinking, you know, we're just reducing the problem to another problem, which is sort of true, but I'll show you how to build these trapdoors. Are there any questions? Okay, so fine. So, I showed you a lattice, right? I showed you a hard problem on a lattice. And I told you that we're going to use trapdoors in order to get, you know, the correctness of our encryption scheme. We're building it now, okay? So let me first show you what these trapdoors can look like. And this is just going to be like a construction by picture. So this is my two-dimensional lattice, okay? This is one basis of this lattice. This is another one. There can be many different bases. And depending on the basis I have, you know, just by eyeballing it, you can see that I can, you know, divide the space into these parallelopipeds, right? So I can just kind of chop up space around the lattice points, you know, parallel to the basis vectors, and I get these parallelopipeds. And different bases will give me different parallelopipeds. Okay, so far so good. Now I'm going to introduce this notion of a good basis. So what do, all this can be made mathematically rigorous, but just for the sake of intuition, okay, what is a good basis? It's a basis which is, you know, quite short, hand waving here, but quite short and almost orthogonal. Okay, we'll see why we like these bases. So if I have a basis which, you know, is fairly short and quite, and, you know, fairly orthogonal, this can be, mathematically you would want like the Gram-Schmidt norm of the basis to be bounded in some way, but this is the right intuition. Then I'm going to call it good. And, you know, if I have this good basis and I ask this question about the closest vector, right? So I give you an arbitrary point in space and I'm asking you what's my closest lattice point, right? Then it turns out that I can actually solve this problem. So, you know, the way that we do this, given any basis, okay, what I can do is that I can always output the center of the parallelopiped that contains T. Okay. So, I have my basis, right? I have these parallelopipeds. And I'm giving you an arbitrary point somewhere and I'm asking you which is my closest lattice point. Now, for any basis, it is possible for me to find the center of the parallelopiped in which this point T lives. This is true not only for a good basis, but for any basis. I can always do this. But if my basis is good, right, then this answer will be pretty good. Okay, whereas if my basis is bad like this, right, then I'm going to output, so this is my parallelopiped, right, this is the center of the parallelopiped that contains this point T, and I'm going to output this as my closest lattice point, but you can see just again, just by eyeballing that this point is closer, this point is also closer than this point, okay. So again, this can be made rigorous, but when I have a bad basis and I output the center of the parallelopiped that contains my desired point, then this turns out to be off by a large margin. Whereas if I have a good basis, then I can solve this, you know, fairly well. Okay, so this is an asymmetry that we have. Okay, so
it seems like the intuition is about a floor function which will capture it.
It's, I think you may have the right intuition. More than floor, it's like a rounding.
Yeah.
So it could be, yeah. So what you can do is, I mean, I have some point, right? And I can just try to express it in the basis and round off the difference. This
Yeah.
will sort of give me the center.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's a good basis, then it's
Exactly.
perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So now the closest vector problem that we saw, as well as other problems, they are hard if I give you an arbitrary basis. Okay, but if I give you a good quality basis, then actually I can solve these problems. And this is the asymmetry that we will use in building our encryption scheme. Okay, so we're going to use our short basis as a cryptographic trapdoor. Okay, and now I claim that we have everything we need to build our first public key encryption scheme. So we have a lattice, right? This is our mathematical structure. It has some nice structure. It's this additive structure. We saw a trapdoor on this. Okay, so what did we see? Just to recap, we saw that if I give you an arbitrary or some bad basis for this lattice, then solving this closest vector problem is hard. If I give you a good basis, then solving this is easy, right? And recovering the good basis from the bad basis is hard. Okay, and in the absence of the good basis, I don't know how to solve this problem. So that is our hardness. Now I'd like us to design a public key encryption scheme using this.
How will we know that the basis given is a good basis? Like, is there any boundary that under which?
Yes. So like I said, we can make it rigorous. So there will be some property that it satisfies. So in a public key encryption scheme, we have a setup algorithm which will generate the public and the secret key. Now, who can guess what should be the public key and what should be the secret key here? What should be our public key?
The lattice parameters could be the public key and the basis could be the private
So
key.
there are which bases?
I mean, the good basis should ideally be
Good.
the
So,
private.
good. So, that's right on track. I mean, if something is, letting me do cool things, solving hard problems, it should be kept secret. So, our good basis will be our secret key. Our public key can be a bad basis. Okay, not just lattice parameters, but actually a bad basis, because I also need to do stuff publicly. So my, my key generation or setup will give me a good and a bad basis, let us say, okay. And I'll keep the good basis secret, I'll publish the bad basis. Now you have to encrypt something, okay. Now for simplicity, let's try to just encrypt a single bit, a 0 or a 1. I want to encrypt either a 0 or a 1, and I need to do this using my bad basis. How should I do it? The intuition is that the attacker, in the absence of the good basis, should not be able to tell if it is a 0 or a 1. The two should look the same. So the encryption of 0 should look similar to the encryption of 1. So this is where the hardness of our problem, the hardness of CVP should come in, right? So can you guess how would I encrypt? What is hard? What did we say is hard? Finding the closest lattice vector is hard. Even distinguishing whether I am close or far to the lattice is hard. Can we think of how could we use this to encrypt a bit? Any thoughts?
Find the closeness as 0, find the further awayness as 1.
Okay, so let me interpret what you said. I think what you're trying to say is that 0 should be somehow close and 1 should be somehow far. That's exactly the right intuition. And why do we get that intuition? Because it's hard to distinguish close from far, right? And I want it to be hard to distinguish 0 from 1. So let me encode 0 by, close and 1 by far, for instance, right? And now how will I decrypt? Anyone else? So I have my secret basis, right, as the secret key. And what can this do? It can figure out, right, is my point close or far. So that's it. That's our first public key encryption scheme. So we'll make the bad basis public. We'll make the good basis secret. Okay, to encrypt, we'll use the bad basis. For 0, we'll output a point which is close to the lattice. So using a bad basis also we can do this. How? Take the bad basis, just take some linear combination, get a lattice point and just shift it a little bit. Okay? It's easy even using a bad basis to output some lattice point, right? Bx for any integer x is a lattice point. And now I'll just shift it a little bit. I'll just add a little bit of noise to it, perturb it a little bit. This gives me a point which is close. What gives me a point which is far? Perturb it by much more, for example. So this is the way in which.
Can we reinterpret as like x-axis, y-axis as zeros and ones, and more bits, more computation is there. Then if we go into multi-dimensional version of the vector space, then the point can be easily found out. So it also
Actually,
shows that the cryptography is 100% possible that point. At that point when we go multi-dimensional.
Actually, no. So I don't think that's the right intuition. So the axes really don't have anything to do with 0 or 1. 0 or 1 is being encoded.
We compare it with hardware, like we compare that algorithm because we are mapping our algorithm into cryptography by hard and something like hard problem and not hard problem. So if we map that problem as a some hardware system computation, then we can say that. Can we say like that?
In my judgment, no, we cannot. Okay, but we can talk more offline to make sure that I understand what you're saying. I don't think such a mapping is really possible. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so yeah, as I already said, in order to decrypt, we use T to figure out whether it's close or far. And the security comes from the hardness of the closest vector problem, and the correctness comes from the properties of the good basis that we saw. Are there any questions? Yes?
Why is it hard to go from one basis to another?
Because we don't know how to do it.
Okay, so it's not easy, or it's just not something we can do. So how do we generate
There
the
is,
basis?
though, in cryptography, in fact in computer science, I mean, we cannot disambiguate hard and don't know how to do it.
Okay.
We don't know how to do it, therefore we conjecture it is hard. So this closest vector problem has been studied very, very thoroughly. It's one of the problems which actually solving it exactly is even NP hard. But as I said earlier, NP hardness, we don't know how to use it. We need something which is average case hard, which means that if I sample a random lattice, right, CVP should be hard on that lattice which I sampled. Otherwise, if there exists a lattice which has CVP hard, I don't know how to use that. Right, so because we built this encryption scheme, for this I need the B, I need the T, right, I need to construct them. So we need average case hardness, and we're going to actually use like an approximate version of the closest vector problem, which is not NP hard. So actually getting cryptography from NP hardness is one of the outstanding open questions in the field of cryptography. We don't know how to do it. Okay. So we will use a version of the problem which is not NP hard, but which we don't know how to solve. And when we say we don't know, I mean this is a very educated we don't know. It's not just looking at it for 2 minutes and saying we don't know. It's been studied over decades and we don't know. The community, the global scientific community does not know after several decades of rigorous studies. So we believe that, let us say that, fine, let us say that our conjecture is even false. We at least don't expect the attacker to figure this out in time to break it. You see, so that's why I said it's like a chess game. We don't actually know. We guess, we believe, we conjecture that this problem is hard, and we prove that in order to break this encryption scheme, you will need to solve the closest vector problem, right? And we expect that the attacker cannot solve this problem. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, okay. So if you have a lattice, finding a good basis and a bad basis is doable.
Yes. So sampling a lattice together with a good basis is doable, yes. But given a particular lattice, finding, and this is intuitive, right? I mean, I can sample short vectors which are nearly orthogonal, take integer linear combinations of those and define that to be my lattice. So this is actually where, when we saw the many worlds, right? So this is a way of sort of sampling a problem with a solution. You see, so I can find, I first pick the solution and then I build the problem. Okay, so this is not, this is doable, this is not hard. But if I fix the lattice, right, and I ask you to find this short basis, then I'm basically reduced to trying all possible combinations of short vectors. And this will take me exponential time. Is this clear to everybody? Yeah.
Basically, for the encryption using the bad basis, like when we discussed bad basis, we said that it is possible that the answers that it would give would not be accurate. So if we are...
No. We said that it is not possible. The word possible is not the one that we used. We said it is highly unlikely that the answer to the closest vector problem that the bad basis gives you is a good answer, right? But note that in encryption, we are actually not solving any hard problem at all. We are creating an instance for somebody to solve. Do you see that?
Right, yeah. So like my question was just that, is it possible that if we use a very arbitrary basis, could it be so bad that we actually end up outputting the opposite? Like we end up encrypting zero as a...
No, this is what I'm trying to say, that I'll finish whenever. How much time do I have? Yeah, so Varsha, I'll finish within 5 minutes, okay? So actually this is only part 1 of the talk. I'll just skip the second part. So this was the warm-up, and then I was going to show some advanced crypto, like something we worked on. We'll just skip that altogether. So what I wanted to say is that let's be very careful, okay, about where these bases are being used. So previously what we said was that using the bad basis, it is hard for me to solve this CVP. What does that mean? Using the bad basis, it's hard for me to decrypt, which is what I want. Using the public key, it's hard for me to decrypt. This is perfectly what I want. Using the bad basis, it is very easy for me to encrypt. Note the difference, right? This is the fundamental asymmetry that we are playing with. Why is it easy? So I told you that, just integer linear combinations of the basis vectors, whether good, whether bad. If you go back to, the slides, right, like any of these slides, right? So these are these basis vectors, right? If I just add them with each other, right, I get points in the lattice. So does everyone agree with me that I can generate points in the lattice irrespective of the quality of my basis? Just take integer combinations, right? You will get some point. Now I can push it away from the lattice. How? Just perturb it, add some noise to it, just push it away. This is easy, right? So pushing it a bit away or quite a bit away, this is easy. So encryption always works. Okay, and so it is not that because the bad basis is bad, it is also bad for encryption. The beauty is that it is good for what it needs to be good for, and it is bad for what it needs to be bad for, because of the asymmetry between encryption and decryption. Encryption is about creating a bad problem. Everyone knows to do that in life, no? Solving hard problems is hard. Creating problems everyone can do, right? So I'll just conclude here. Okay, so I just wanted to say that, so all of cryptography is, this sort of jugalbandi between correctness and security, algorithms and complexity, structure and randomness. Okay, and it has lots and lots of open problems. It's at the very heart of the science of computing. As I already told you, we don't know how to use NP-complete problems for cryptography. We don't really know how hard are the problems that we do know how to use. And this is something that my advisor told me when I was a PhD student. Cryptographers rarely sleep well. And really this is true. Okay, I don't know, I'm supposed to be selling this field to you. But really, I mean, you don't know anything. Okay, so you don't sleep well, but okay, and if this weren't bad enough, so again, some more reverse advertisement here. Okay, so quantum enters the picture. These are, computers that use quantum rather than classical physics, and they break all number theoretic cryptography. Okay, so I'm going to skip all this, and I'll just say that in summary, okay, so cryptography is powerful. Cryptography is surprising. I didn't want to skip these slides, right? So, but most importantly, cryptography is beautiful. Okay, and I hope you will join us in this wonderful adventure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal, for such an interesting talk. I hope it's inspired you all to explore the amazing yet paradoxical world of cryptography. We would now like to express our gratitude to Professor Shweta Agrawal with a token of appreciation. I'd like to request Professor Sharad to do the honors.